It's time to answer your wood turning questions. Hi, I'm Kent and welcome to Turn a Wood Bowl. Today I'm going to answer your questions. Yep, there are lots of questions that get asked both here on the YouTube channel and on my website at turnawoodbowl.com. I get tons of comments and questions and I do my best to answer all of those questions. I actually devote many hours a week to reading and answering viewer questions. But there are some questions that seem to come up a little more often than others, and I want to answer some of those here and share them with you because there's a good chance that they might pertain to you as well and you'll benefit from this information. At the end of the day, that's why I'm here. I'm here to help you guys answer questions so it makes your whole wood bowl turning process that much easier and more enjoyable, because there's nothing more frustrating than going through projects and having troubles and issues and things that you don't quite understand. So the more answers you have to your questions, the more knowledge you'll have at hand when you're at your lathe turning, and you have a much better chance of having some great success when you're turning bowls. So let's jump in and get started. All right, question number one comes from John Picarillo. I have a problem with turning oak wood. The bed lathe turns rusty right away as I turn into a blank. I have tried wax, silicone spray, etc. Nothing seems to prevent the rust. I cover most of the bed with plastic trash bags, but not the area under the blank. I have sanded with 400 grit and oil to remove the stains, also using rust remover. None of the other wood I turn does this. Am I doing something wrong, or is this the nature of the wood? How do I protect the tools, chuck, and bed? Well, John, yeah, you have discovered that oak contains tannins, and tannins are highly acidic and they can cause rust. But it's not only oaks. There's also other trees such as black cherry and mahoganies, other trees that have high tannin levels as well, and they can also rust exposed steel. Now, the irony of this is that the word tannin is derived from German, the German language, and it literally means oak. So oak and tannin are basically the same thing in German. And the tannic acid from oak trees is or was used to tan hides for leather, and that's where the term tanning came from. Tannins from the oak tree were used for tanning leather. So a little bit of history there, which is kind of interesting. But that highly acidic liquid that comes out of a wet green oak turning on your lathe can and will rust any exposed steel. Now, stainless steel, it won't bother, but any kind of regular steel, it will rust. So you're going about it the right way. You basically just want to cover everything that you can, and you don't want to leave any tools laying around because they're going to become rusty as well. I got to tell you, I went to a workshop once and I brought a whole bunch of extra tools and I had them in a little box on the floor, and we were turning oak and shavings were building up in that box. I had every single tool got rusty in there. It was very discouraging. It made me not want to turn oak anymore. But I got to tell you what, oak is very beautiful. Despite the tannin and a little bit of problems that tannins create, oak wood can be beautiful and you can make some really beautiful turnings from it. So don't be discouraged by the tannins. I would continue to turn oak, just you have to be cautious with it. Now, if you get your tools rusty or your lathe becomes rusty, you're going about it the right way. You can basically sand it off with a high grit sandpaper or steel wool. There's also some rust removers on the market, and I'll put a link to one that I've used in the past in the description below this video, so check that out. All in all, you're not doing anything wrong. Oak and other woods have high tannins in them. You just want to be aware of that when you're turning and use some caution. But again, don't let that stop you from turning those woods, because there's some beautiful wood out there, especially black cherry. Black cherry is gorgeous. Now, one other thing, a little bonus for this is, because of that high tannin level, those woods, the oaks, the black cherries, the mahoganies, and there's several others. You do a little bit of research, you'll find what species have high tannins and which ones have low tannins. But the high tannin woods are also very easy to ebonize. That means you can make them look very dark if you want, such as the dark exterior of a bowl while leaving the inside natural. You can do that by using an ebonizing process. I've got a video all about ebonizing, and I'll put a link to that up in the corner here so you guys can check that out. The next question comes from Don Ring. Kent, concerning the finish that you recommend, tried and true, have you had any problems with it going bad if left in the container for extended periods of time? most paints and polyurethanes, if left in the can, will cure in the can, or at least skin over due to the presence of oxygen. I can buy a gallon for the cost of 2 quarts of the tried and true, but if it's going to go bad, I'm no further ahead. Please let me know your experience with this issue. Thank you, Don Ring. All right, Don, yeah, it's a great question. And it will skin over. This is a polymerized, I think that's how you say it. I'm going to say polymerized, and I'm not 100% sure, but don't quote me on that. But essentially, the finish is designed to start curing when it is exposed to oxygen. So you are right about that. If you open the large can, the gallon can, and you leave it exposed, it will go bad. So here's what I do. I too buy the gallon can of this. It's somewhat expensive, but it goes a long ways. And actually, I don't go through it that fast. This is probably a year and a half old, and there's still plenty in the can. Instead of going back to the large can every time I need to use the product, what I'll do is I'll pour some off into a recycled glass container like this. And I'll only pour a little bit, maybe an inch or so in this container. And that will last me a long time because, as you know, the application for this is a very thin coat on the bowl surface. If you can see finish on the wood, you have plenty there. There's no reason for this to ever go on very thick, so you don't need a lot. And as you might be able to see here as well, this is becoming cured on the glass in this container. So if I kept going back to that can, the can's most likely going to gunk up like this as well. But instead, I only go to that can periodically. I've probably only been into this can maybe 8 or 10 times filling up these containers. These containers stay on my shelf and I use them over and over as I need, and they go bad instead of the whole can going bad. So a large gallon can will last you a very long time if you want to purchase that. And just a little disclaimer, I am not paid by Tried and True. I really like their products. They do a great job. It's all natural, simplistic. There's no additives, preservatives, chemicals, nothing. And that's why I like them so much. And I know there's a lot of you guys out there that like making your own finishes, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have the time to do that, and I don't want to mess up. I don't want to take a bowl that I've spent a lot of time turning on and have a finish that wasn't quite formulated properly ruin that bowl. So I know that when I go back to this can of Tried and True, I'm going to have a good quality product every single time. But that being said, you can make your own as well. Basically, the Tried and True original is linseed oil and beeswax, and that's it. Now, you could make that yourself, but I know that there are steps in the process that Tried and True makes it that make it unique and make it work for what I need. So I'm going to let them be the experts at that, and I'm going to continue doing my bowl turning. If you want to make your own finish, you could totally do that. But to answer your question, Don, essentially pour off a little bit in a little recycled container, and that's going to prevent that large can from going bad in a short period of time. If you're liking this video, do me a huge favor and click that like button below the screen, and also make sure you're subscribing. And also check out my 101 tips, tricks, and techniques for wood bowl turning online digital ebook, which is ready for download right now. This is also printable, so you can print it out and keep it in your shop. And it is loaded with all kinds of tips and information that you're going to want to have handy when you're turning your bowls. All right, here's our next question. Hello, Mr. Weekly. My name is Soren Bowman. I'm from Germany, and I'm a great fan of your YouTube videos. This year, I start with wood turning, and I've learned a lot by watching your videos. Your explanations are very easy to understand. Your English is good to understand, so I like your channel most. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. My German is horrible. I don't know any German, but I'm glad my English works for you. The reason I'm writing to you is, how do you establish your bowl prices? I have no idea how to get prices for wood bowls. Maybe you can help me out to learn about that. Kind regards, Soren Bowman. All right, Soren, that's a great question. I get this question very often. And I have to say, the first thing I want to say is, if you're going to give your bowls away, then just give them away. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you want to make bowls and you enjoy turning and you're not in it for a business and you want to enjoy the feeling of handing this down to a friend or family member, then just do that. Give them to them. And that's a wonderful gift, and it's most likely going to be a well-received heirloom that lasts for generations, and that's fantastic. However, if you turn a bowl and you decide to sell it, but for whatever reason, and there's a number of reasons, whether you're not confident in your turning skills, if you're not familiar with how to sell things in the market, or if you just don't know how to price something, don't price it where you're giving it away. I see many times beautiful bowls that are turned very well that people are selling, basically giving them away for $5 or $10. And it might seem like it's an okay thing to do. However, it really hurts everybody that's turning wood bowls because it devalues all of those bowls. So if you're not quite sure of how to price it, or if you don't want to price it at an actual fair price, then just give your bowls away. And I don't mean that with any disrespect. There's nothing wrong with giving bowls away, but try to price your bowls fairly so that it makes the marketplace and it makes all wood bowl turners have a better chance at making a decent profit when they turn wood bowls. Now keep in mind, when you're turning a wood bowl and you're selling it, you're not just selling that bowl itself. You're selling all the time it took to process the wood. If you went out and gathered your own tree and processed that into bowl blanks, you're charging for all of that time, all those materials, all the equipment you have, and all the knowledge. All of those hours it took you to understand and learn when you were here, hopefully, and you learned from some of my courses and things like that, how to go about sharpening your tools, how to go about turning the bowl, how to go about dealing with green wood. All of that knowledge goes into that final product. So even if you're able to turn a bowl in a short period of time on your lathe, there's a lot more that goes into it than just that final piece. So now with all that being said, how do I go about pricing my bowls? Well, the way I go about doing is that I use measurements because every bowl is unique and different. So let me give you an example. So a small bowl like this is about 6 inches wide by 2 inches high. I'll take those two measurements, and you can do this in centimeters too, because I realize, Soren, you're in Germany and you don't use inches most likely. So you can do this in centimeters. This is 15 centimeters by about 5 centimeters. You can multiply those two, and that's going to give you a factor, okay? In my case, I use 6 inches by 2 inches. I multiply them, I get the factor of 12. Now, the way I price things is I multiply them by 2.5. So my number that I came up with here is 12 times 2.5 is going to be 24, and 6 is going to be 30. So this bowl I would sell for $30. Now, that's a starting point as far as pricing. I will look at this bowl and say, is this pretty unique? Is there something unique about this that makes it more valuable? Well, I used quarter sawn wood with this, and that's something I can't get very often, and it is more valuable. It's got a really elegant shape. I think this will sell well. I might mark this up a little more to like $35 or $40 instead of the $30 that I got from my formula. Now let's do that with a different bowl. So here's a live edge bowl, and this is measuring 11 inches across by approximately 6 inches high. So 11 times 6 is 66. Now we multiply 66 by 2.5 and we're going to get 132 and 33, about $165. Now I look at this and I say, is this worth $165? Well, it might be very expensive for some people, and there's nothing wrong with that. You shouldn't be trying to price your bowls to sell to anybody and everybody. You're going to want to find the person that really wants this bowl. This bowl is designed to be a centerpiece. It's designed to be used in the kitchen to put fruit in it. It's designed to be seen every day. If someone really wants this bowl, they're going to be willing to pay for it. After I've calculated that 165, I will look at this bowl in particular again and say, well, what makes this unique? Well, it's live edge. That's a beautiful characteristic of this particular bowl, and I think overall it's just a gorgeous bowl. So I might actually bring that price up a little bit more. Now you need to do your own homework, and it's going to be based on your market and your customers. So if, for instance, you want to sell your bowls at a farmer's market, well, go to that farmer's market and see what other people are charging for their products. You might not be able to find somebody there selling bowls. If you can, that's great, because you can see what their prices are and you can kind of watch and see if they're actually selling their bowls. If they are, then their prices might be right, or you might be able to charge a little more, or you might have to charge a little bit less. But do your homework and see what other people are charging. And again, make sure it's a fair price. If it seems ridiculously low, then you're probably not pricing it quite right. So don't be afraid to charge a fair price for your work, because your work has got a lot of time and effort that went into making it. Even if it's a very short period of time on the lathe, there's a lot that went on both for you to develop yourself and in the process of making that bowl that you need to be compensated for. So Soren, I hope that answers your question. You will of course have to convert those numbers into what works for you with euros or the Deutschmark or whatever currency you're using. But I think you can see what we're doing as far as diameter and height, and that gives you a multiple, and then that way you can chart it. And the great thing about that is it accounts for all the different variations in sizes that you'll be turning, so you'll be able to come up with a pretty consistent price across the board. Okay, here's a question I get a lot. What is that screen behind you when you're turning? Well, it's a screen. All right, the screen behind me is used to deflect shavings, and it actually does a good job at deflecting dust and preventing dust from drifting all over my shop and coating all the shelves and covering everything in dust. So I basically stretch up the screen behind me. It's essentially a replacement window screen. You can go to any hardware store and get a roll of this stuff, and basically one roll is all you need to wrap around your lathe. Now I put it around the back side of my lathe and down on the tailstock into my lathe, and that just basically prevents everything from flying through the back of my shop. The roll of screen is about 3.5 feet, maybe 4 foot wide, about a meter in width, and you can get wider ones or shorter ones, but this works well for me. It doesn't go all the way to the floor, but it's in the air behind me, so it's really catching everything that's flying behind the lathe or over my shoulder. It usually catches most of that, and it's a great help when it comes to cleaning up the shop afterwards. Most of the shavings hit it and drop to the floor, and they just need to be swept up, and they're already piled up at the edge of the screen, which makes it really, really nice. Now, I also use bungee cords to suspend this from the ceiling, but when you put a bungee cord on here, you're going to want to add a grommet because the bungee cord is going to rip through the screen. Let me show you how I add the grommet. Okay, you might want to roll the screen out and see how much you need and where you want to put your grommets, but essentially you're going to put them in the corners for sure. So I'm going to put this first grommet up here. And what I need to do is I need to use a little grommet kit. Now I have an older kit that's kind of old school and a little bit more expensive, but I come in from the corner a little bit, and this is a little die punch. You hammer that, you need a piece of scrap wood underneath it. And that'll cut out the hole for where the grommet will go. And then you place a little form on the back, put the grommet in there. I also like to put a backing piece of material on this so the grommet doesn't cut through the screen. And then you take this little punch, and the punch is going to curl the die over. And that curls the inside portion of that bottom piece around the top piece, and you've got a nice grommet there. Now I'll put a link to a grommet set in the description below this video. It'll probably be a little different than this. I've had this for years and years, and I use it for all sorts of different things, but there are different varieties or styles of this grommet connectors that do basically the same thing. So I'll put a link to one of those in the description below. So that's how I add the grommets to the screen, so that I can put a nice bungee cord through there, and then I don't have to worry about the screen being torn apart. I hope this video has helped answer some questions for you. Maybe there were some questions you didn't even know you had, and now you have some new knowledge that you could take with you to your shop and perhaps improve your shop a little bit by adding a screen or being prepared the next time you turn some wet oak wood so that you don't have rusty tools afterwards. All right, guys, do me a favor, leave me a comment, and if you have a question, leave it there, and I might add it to a future question and answer video. Just remember, wood bowl turning, like so many things in life, is about experience, building your knowledge base, and your skill sets. And as all of those improve, you're going to have the ability to create some amazing looking bowls, and I'm so excited for you. And if you're already there, I'm thrilled for you, and I wish you the best. And as always, until next time, happy turning.